Hey everyone. So for my action project, I focused on community engagement as a tool to explore planetary health and engage with the local African diaspora. So before moving to Australia, I was at the University of Kansas where I studied human biology and global and international studies. And some of the courses that I took as part of my undergrad program were classes like the principles of molecular and cellular biology, but I was also enrolled in classes like modern and contemporary African art. And I always had a hard time explaining, not only to my friends, but to my family, what exactly it was I was studying. Um, they were always confused and they couldn't really keep up with all the electives and things I was enrolled in. But I knew that I was interested in not just learning about the mechanisms of how the human body worked, but the problem that I fell in love with was looking at these systems and these structures that affected our society as a whole and that influenced our health outcomes. And that's when I began to pivot more and more towards policy and looking at public health. And being at a predominantly white institution, I've always had cultural competency at the top of mind. I tried to actively find ways to embed that in my studies, both in the classroom and outside of the class. So during my senior year, that's my last year of undergrad, I was the executive director of the Center for Community Outreach, or CCO for short. And for one of our largest events during the year, we developed service opportunities for our students to engage in sustainability. And these were derived from conversations that we had directly with the local community. So we coordinated over a dozen community-based events that address sustainability from each of the focuses of the individual programs. And because of the relationship the university has with the town, those conversations that we were having and the actions that we were taking around sustainability were localized, and those came from collaborative partnerships with those organizations. But for context, Lawrence is pretty small. It's like 90 square kilometers, and comparatively, the greater Melbourne area is around 10,000. So I wanted to see if I could apply those techniques in a different context, in a more larger geographical area. So when applying for my Fulbright to pursue my master's, I wanted to make sure that I moved to a city that was diverse. And I intentionally chose Melbourne because it's home to the largest Somali diaspora in the country. I wanted to ensure that I lived in a place where I could connect with the people and the communities that I hope to serve in the future. I left the States wanting to build on my undergrad experiences, where I explored these big picture ideas around health equity and social determinants of health, but still working with the people. So fast forward to the end of my semester here, to the end of my first semester here in Australia, and I saw the application open for Wattle. And I remember thinking, this is the perfect opportunity to apply community engagement, but in a different geographical context, and on a tighter timeline, but with a more specific focus on planetary health. So this was finally an opportunity for me to explore what community engagement looks like on an international level. And I was really excited to tie in all these different elements from these experiences that I've had throughout undergrad with this really specific thematic focus. So when designing my action project, I wanted to ensure that the work that I did, similar to the work I was doing in Kansas, was steered by the people who it was meant to serve. This meant not only getting a lay of the land, but really putting in the time and effort to connect with people on a personal level. I was building relationships and really building trust with local community, not only to design a project, but understand their relevance in the specific context. And I knew that for my project, I wanted these ideas to come from the needs that were identified from the young people themselves. So this meant that I had to connect with various organizations who are already doing community work. Although it might not have been directly related to sustainability, I thought it would be great to kind of see what's happening already. And I attended a lot of events with the Somali diaspora and the African diaspora in general across the city. And I was asking questions like, if they had space to discuss climate change amongst their peers, if they thought about the effects of climate change on their health, and if they'd be interested in developing their skills more broadly. And I found that although there's plenty of programming around the greater Melbourne area for African young people, there wasn't much activity in the sustainability or climate justice space. So I decided to start there. And because of the demonstrated interest, I thought it was really important to facilitate networking and relationship building activities. So I decided to plan an additional career event to supplement the workshops that we're already designing. My hope is that eventually when I do leave Australia, that these programming and these connections will continue to exist. My proposed theory of change, it hinges on locality and overall capacity building. And I look forward to actually conducting these workshops in the next month and comparing the experiences with our intended outcomes. I think the most interesting piece so far has just been being able to transfer my experience in Kansas to an entirely new context and seeing how that's been able to translate really well here. So in addition to my action project, I think one of the most transformative elements for me as my time as a Wattle Fellow and here in Australia has been the opportunity to learn about place-based change directly from Indigenous elders. So earlier this semester, we went up to Mildura, which is Lachi Lachi country, for Change Fest. And attending Change Fest really cemented my research interests and reminded me that although it seems to be an emerging field in Western contexts and the Western literature, these ideas of place-based change have existed for hundreds of years in First Nations and Indigenous cultures. They've always been responsive to local needs. And I'm finding it really hard to believe that my time as a Wattle Fellow is wrapping up. And so is my time in Australia, kind of sad. But I applied to Wattle knowing that I only had a year and a half left. But I wanted to make sure that although my journey may have been time-bound in locality, not on overall purpose, and a lot of the relationships that I've built, I'm hoping to continue and maintain even when I leave. I've learned so much from this Wattle ecosystem. I feel like I thrive in multidisciplinary environments, and this has been the perfect place for me to really just like learn from my peers and talk about things from all these different perspectives and majors and just like focus areas. I've been able to really contextualize this place and build relationships across the city. And this experience has really enriched my Fulbright in a way that I hadn't anticipated. I'm really excited to continue learning about the city and sustainability in general while exploring planetary health, but I got to do it through learning about bees, bee hotels, and cargo bikes, and renewable energy, and all the other really cool focuses that the fellow Wattlers had. So I still have about like 7 months left on this island, but this is the first of my official wrap-ups. I'll be floating around for the rest of the day, but I'd love to stay connected with you guys. Thank you.